Hey everyone, and welcome to this month's virtual happy hour. Pew, 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 pew. My bad, turned it off. It's all good. We were checking to make sure everything was live, and we're just so happy it's here. So, just checking the chat box. Hey everyone, don't forget if you are looking, some of you guys, it just says hi and it says your Facebook user. There is Let me find the way to do the chat because I know there's a specific way for you guys. There's like a little cheat code. Actually, Tiffany, if you remember how to do it, I know there's a way to let you guys have your names. You just have to click it once through Facebook. It lets you do that. If you want to be able to see your name, the easiest way to do that is actually YouTube because Facebook doesn't really like them to let me see what you guys see. So it literally says like right now, it says like Facebook user, da 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 da. So I'm excited. So just so you guys know, I do have curated comments that we can go over, or if you guys are here live and you want your questions answered, go ahead and put them in the chat box and you're going to be able to see. There we go. So if you go to Restream, go to chat.restream.io/Facebook and just say, yeah, you can let me see your name. I'll leave that up for a few minutes while you guys are checking it out. But yeah, if you guys have questions, post them now. I am all yours till about 7:30, 8 o'clock Eastern. And I'm going to answer questions the best that I can as we're going along. So I have my first question, and I'm going to answer it soon. But I want to see Ruth, I can't have favorites. I agree. So she said, I don't know if this is allowed, but I love the idea of traveling with you. So this is something I'm really actually excited about. So I found this really great travel. It's meant for solos in groups, which doesn't make any sense. But if you're like me, it's one of those situations where, give me 1 second. Oh, I do. So I am live on YouTube. So it looks like I am live, Tiffany. I'm sorry you can't see it, but it is showing up on my end. So because you can see Ruth here answered a question on YouTube. So I found this company. I used this company years ago, and it was for the student travel, but they actually have an adult version of the traveling. It's international travel. They do have American stuff as well. But I love the idea of just being able to travel with my community. We've done business retreats, we've done like get togethers and conferences. And I'm more of an organic person. I like to kind of have these really intense 1 hour conversations and then come apart. And that's what I really loved about having people come to my home and spend like a weekend and do those retreats. But they are expensive because I have to block my entire time off and I'm all yours for that weekend, or I'm all yours in a group setting. So this I felt like would be more, I wouldn't make any money off of it. It's not really to make me money and go traveling. It's more of like, I want to travel with my people. And while we're there, if we want to talk about your business, great. I love that idea so much. Um, and yeah, so we might do something. And if you are interested in either creating a group get together in Newport or even going one on one, you can always message me. We're definitely going to be doing things in the future. I want to do more traveling, probably more so next year and the year after. So 2025, 24, and 25. And I would love to go with other groomers. So that's something we're looking at. I'm going to be possibly doing Italy or Ireland. And again, I don't get any money from it. I'm the group host. Everyone books with me. That way we're all in the same group. And then you guys can hang out when we want to hang out, go on the group tours, or you can go off and do your own thing. So I really like that. I think it's very safe. And I think, again, it's hard for a lot of us groomers because we're hardworking. And a lot of us we meet up with our friends when we're away, but this might be a great way of doing it. So let's go ahead and rock and roll. And like I said, on the screen here is to let Restream see your name on Facebook. If you are on YouTube, I can see your name. It makes life a lot easier. Oh, that's awesome. Downtown Hound, I love that name, is taking her first European trip this October. England, France, Italy. I love it. Love it. I'm going to do Japan by myself for my birthday in November. And then I'm thinking probably Europe next year. I'm not really sure. I'm really torn. And then for 2025, I'd either love to do spring in Japan, or it would be fall. It would be between end of April, early June in Australia. But once I know what's going on with you guys, the way it works is that as a group coordinator, I have about, let's say I have about, they want me to book 6 people within 30 days to guarantee the trip. So that's where I'm kind of like, do I take that chance? Like, I don't want, because otherwise they're going to put us with different groups. They can't guarantee the group be together because it's really designed for solo travelers. So that's where I'm like, kind of on the edge of like, do I do it? Don't I do it? Because obviously, like, I don't want to go on the trip and then we're not together. I want to have this group together. And we're not a big enough group that they would block off an entire group gathering for us. So we would be a mini group within a bigger group. So we'd have to have at least 7 people, including me, or 6 people, not including me. So, oh, Ruth is saying I'm doing Egypt and Israel. That's this September. That's amazing. I want to go away at least once a year. I definitely think Europe 2024, and then 2025, definitely, either Australia or Japan. So I'm just trying to figure out if we want to do Italy or if we want to do Ireland and England. And, it just, I don't know about France. I feel like France is, if you're going to do just one country, and then anyway, but I agree. Like, if you're going to do France, it needs to be with another country. But there's so many things we can do. But I love the idea of either doing England and Ireland, or Ireland and Scotland, or just doing Italy. I feel like Italy would almost have to be by itself. But anyway, all of you other people here, you're like, why are we talking about this? Well, because I think it would be really fun. And like I said, I would not be charging extra for me to be there. I would make myself available for these coaching times, for these questions within reason. I'm a person, I need to sleep. But I think that'd be really fun. Be like, hey, I'm going, if you want to just talk as colleagues, I'm happy to do that. I think that would be really, really fun versus having, we definitely want to do group stuff in Newport at my house. This year's been a little bit hectic between the business shifting, us growing, and then this year I'm homeschooling Ronan. He's getting so big. But anyway, I digress. London, Paris, and Rome. I love it. I'm so jealous. Those are on my bucket list. I spent 10 days in Spain, and Spain was great. It was so beautiful, but I made the mistake of going in the middle of summer, and Spain was so hot. It was so hot. And I'm not a beer drinker, and the beer was €1 and water was like €3. I'm like, this makes no sense. And you couldn't really drink your own water. It was a pain in the butt. But anyway, so let's get to our first question. And like I said, if you guys have more questions, you're welcome to answer them. I am all your guys until about between 7:30 and 8 o'clock, depending on how many questions we have. So one of the questions we have, what should I do if I want to charge more, but people won't pay that in my area? So one of the biggest misconceptions is people won't pay my price. And a lot of times we are assuming it's based on price, and a lot of times it's based on value, right? Really often we're sitting there going, people are cheap, people are this, people are that. You could live in an impoverished area. That's absolutely possible, right? You could definitely live in an area that is incredibly impoverished. But I'll tell you what, if your price point is a livable wage, and it's, again, it depends on where you're living and what's going on. But if it's a livable wage, and most of the time we're looking at about $100 an hour to make a livable wage because we want to pay our groomers 30% or less, right? Then you have to ask yourself, do you live in an area that can sustain a groomer, right? And what happens with a lot of people that ask these questions, they'll say something like, oh, I need help. I'm like, customers are calling me every day, da, 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 right? Then you can't live in the same place if they won't pay your price. So whenever people are asking about, things like price, I always want that to be the least interesting thing about your business, right? Your price point is the least interesting thing about your business. I want to know, what solution do you need, right? So one of the way, and again, my brand is very, well, if you know me, you know, it's very matter of fact. It's very tongue in cheek, right? It's very, it is what it is, right? I feel like that's like, if I had a slogan for my brand as Riverly, it is what it is. So one thing we used to say when someone would call is I would say something along the lines of, they go, how much do you charge for a Shih Tzu or a Yorkie or a Doodle or this, that? I would always preface of, we are, no one has ever chosen us because of our price. Would you like to know why people choose us? And this would allow me to instantly validate if this person is a price shopper or if they actually want my services because they want my services. Um, I always let people know that I am definitely not the cheapest. And you can even put that, if you have an intake form, you can put that there. So the question is not so much why won't they pay your price? It's what are you not creating value with? Is it that you're not marketing yourself the right way? Is it that you're not really clear on your soulmate client? Is there something missing that you need to kind of work through? I see a lot of your guys' social media, and it's not so much you're selling to other groomers. You're creating what I lovingly call groomer porn, right? It's like I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, like this is gorgeous, right? But as a customer, they don't know if, they don't know that that's a beautiful groom. They think it's a beautiful dog, right? Even if you do a before and after, right? We want those big before and afters, but if we do big before and afters, we're then attracting people that dog looks like that hot mess express, right? Versus someone creating maintain. So if we were to look at for your clients, what is the pain point? What is the problem that you solve? And do potential clients care about that pain point, about that solve? Or is it not so much they don't care about the price, but what you're trying to solve, they don't actually care is solved. Um, like for instance, like people will often say, "Oh, well, people for hand stripping won't pay for hand stripping." And I'm like, "Well, do they care enough to hand strip versus clipper?" Right? That's a pain point. If I'm like, I really want somebody to maintain my dog's natural coat type, I really want him to look like his breed. I have to care enough. I have to care enough for that to pay that price. But if I'm like, you know what? I don't really care. Shave him down. I know it'll ruin his coat forever, whatever. Right. That means that pain point is actually not that effective and that helpful. So I hope that helps. And I think, again, you have to live in an area. Either the reality is no one's willing to pay that price, right? And it's not sustainable, it's not livable, right? I doubt most of us don't live in areas where you can't sustain a groomer. We're in such demand, right? Unless we live in a very rural area. And even if you live in a very rural area, the internet has been amazing to get people to you, but they need to know what you solve and why you are the perfect fit for them. You need to create a beacon for your soulmate client. So I hope that helps. Let me move on to my next. And by the way, I'm drinking wine out of my Starbucks cup. So I feel like this is like a little white trash, but you know what? I'm living my best life. It's good. And I got these really cute paw print earrings at Super Zoo last year, and I'm never wearing them. I'm like, why don't I wear these? These are so freaking cute. Oh, thank you so much for letting me know we're live on Facebook. A lot of times we're trying to chase to see if these things are live and connected. That's always my goal. This is a great question too. So what certificate, CE, or schooling would you like to see potentially hiring a cat groomer? So I am biased, completely biased, 100% biased. So take this with a grain of salt. I am a CFMG, which is a certified feline master groomer. I got my training through the National Cat Groomers Institute, which is Danelle German. A few of my friends are certifiers, and I really believe in the curriculum. I do think there are other systems that work, but I find that consistently people that are CFMGs that have gone through the training, that have become CFMGs, whether that's through a pop-up school, whether it's hands-on instruction, whether that's they, did the exams online and then they had someone come just to do the practicals. They're badass cat groomers. They really are. I think there are other ways of doing it. But I really feel like if you're going to hire someone that you want to trust with a cat, that you don't want to have to quote unquote worry, I would hire a CFMG or I would invest in someone to become a CFMG. On the flip side, it's not cheap to become a CFMG, and not everyone can become a CFMG. But CFMGs can 99.9% of the time groom by themselves, can groom cats by themselves. They know health signs if there is an issue. And I almost always, if you're hiring a CFMG, I would ask them where they certified and who that certifier was. And then I would message the certifier and say, hey, did you certified Susie Q in 2022 or 2020, whatever year we're in, right? 2020. That way it's been a few years, right? Can you tell me anything about her? Is there anything that you felt was, whatever? And the certifiers are amazing. They're going to give you insight and honesty. And I think that's the best way to go. Personally, I think cat grooming should be taken very seriously. I think as an industry, we joke about it and we treat it like they're small dogs. I think that's completely inappropriate. I think that cat grooming is very dangerous. I think cat grooming should be done properly. And I think if we treated cat grooming with the level of respect that we do with dog grooming, I think that it could go a long way. And I think we could have more cat groomers. But make sure too, you definitely want to hire a cat groomer because you're going to build a clientele for this one groomer. And then if they quit, they leave, they go off on their own. Now you've basically built up a clientele for that person. And I don't love that for you guys, right? Like my goal is for you to build a business for you. When you hire somebody with a very specific skill set, let's say it's even hand stripping, right? Or breed standard grooming that either you can't replicate as an owner or you don't have a staff full of people that know how to do that. When that person quits, you've essentially paid them to build a clientele that then that goes then with them. So that's a great question. And I hope that helps. So somebody asked, create a beacon for your soulmate client. So if you guys know, like a lighthouse, it creates a beacon, right? It's like beep, beep. It's like shining a light. So when you have a soulmate client, and this happened recently, I had a student who was like, oh, your wording on your website just spoke to me. When we have a soulmate client, we want to know their demographics, like their psychographics, etc. So, are they, in general, we don't know for sure, but if we had to make up a character in a book, right, we were making up a character, is it a man or a woman? Is it somebody in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, or 60s? Ish, if you had to make this character up. Are they making 100 grand? Are they making 30 grand? Are they making 20 grand? How much money are they making? Right? If you're creating it for them. So my soulmate client, when I owned my grooming business, when I had my cat grooming business, I called her Kathy. So I created a whole character. So Kathy was a woman, late 40s, early 50s, maybe in her late 50s, 60s, but most likely, late 40s, early 50s. And Kathy either had kids that were in high school and going to college, or she never had kids. She was higher up in her career, so she had time to have a flexible schedule. And she was making, in my area, at least, I would say 75, 80 to 100 grand. Why is that important? Because somebody who's going to pay for mobile cat grooming, and I only worked from the time I dropped my son off at school to the time I picked him up. So it's about 8 to like 2, right? And I only groomed Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So somebody who can fit into those hours needs to be high enough on the food chain for work that they can be flexible, right? It needs to make enough money that $100 a month is no big deal. And so how do I speak to Kathy, who loves her cat? What is her pain point? And one example would be, I always joke that people aren't cat enough. And until you've had a very precious cat, right? Until you've had, especially like your purebred people who we get these breeds that are just incredibly dumb. My cat is so dumb and so useless and so unathletic. Like, I'm just like, people don't worry about cats jumping off of things. My cat has to have like a stairway up to his food because he can't jump. He can't jump on the kitchen table. He is very unathletic and very dumb, and he has no sense of self-preservation. And it scares me to death when he goes places because I love him to bits and I'm afraid he's going to hurt himself or, you know, he's going to just stick his head in a wood chipper. So when you think about that, my pain point is I want him safe. I want somebody who actually likes my cat. I want somebody who understands the breed, who understands that, again, I don't want someone to just drop it, right? Absolutely. So that's where we really want to figure that out, right? And from there, we want to, for me, that person was like, I really want someone who understands my cats. They like my cat. And so being a cat expert, it would be like, I love cats. I show I love cats, my cat being cat only. This person who loves their cat and wants their cat to do it, they're going to go ahead and they're going to book with me. Why? Because they're like, oh my God, yes, this is exactly what I want. I wanted a groomer who puts cats first, who understands cats, who's not a dog groomer who's going to tolerate my cats. One of the Facebook users said, building a story brand is a great book that describes making your beacon and helps understand what your clients are hearing those clients. I will say, Danelle German does story branding websites. If anyone is interested in getting anything professionally story branded, I will say it's a great start. I actually really like Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vee. But building a story brand is a great way to start. It's a little outdated at this point for marketing purposes. A lot of that stuff has been overdone. So just be a little bit careful. People have been over marketed to. People have been over, I don't know how to put it. Like they're just, I mean, if you think about it, like there's so much, the way that things are marketed nowadays, if not that I watch a ton of commercials, but the commercials that I see, a lot of them are for better, for worse, trying to make you feel a certain way, right? Like when I look at a Coca-Cola always kind of did that. But like there was like a razor commercial and I was like, why is this trying to like make me feel a certain way? Just tell me your razors work, right? That's all I want. I think that's where too, I think StoryBrand is a great book. It's a great place to start if you're not sure a lot about that, about marketing. But it is hard. And it's the main thing I think that helps groomers is to think about who you are, what value you bring beyond a good haircut. Don't say I do a good haircut. Everyone thinks they do a good haircut. The only way that is a marketing is if everyone around you does a really jacked up haircut. What beyond that is really, really good. All right, so let's pop up. So we have what general pay for grooming managers, what responsibility does that include? Also, if general manager attends a groom expo, does the company cover all expenses plus an hourly rate? So Tiffany, if you don't mind, we actually have a video on grooming managers and what they should do. So grooming salon managers should be groomers because they have to be able to step in, but they should not be grooming. And it really depends upon what it is that their goal is. Is their goal growing and managing staff? Is the goal for them to basically babysit everyone and keep them on task? Or is their goal basically to fill in as needed? I think a lot of people say like grooming salon manager or grooming manager, and what they really mean is I want someone in charge who's not me. I'm not saying that's you. I'm just saying in the general industry. So generally speaking, it depends upon what it is that the business does. So let's say, for instance, it's a salon, right? That salon, if they are constantly growing groomers, because there's only two ways to make a groomer, right? First way is to bribe them and bribe them well enough that they're going to leave their current grooming situation. Two is to build them from scratch. Take someone who doesn't know what they're doing and teach them to groom. So is that grooming manager recruiting, building, and, retaining employees? Are they more customer service oriented? Are they, maintaining the clientele and creating connection and doing that? Are they doing the back end stuff, which is, payroll and bookkeeping? Are they doing inventory management? There's so many things that they could do. And the other thing I want you to put in perspective too is, what is a livable wage in your area? So for instance, if you're like, okay, my groomers need to make 60 to, let's say 60 to 80 a year, my groomers, then your managers need to make 80 to 100 because as a manager, I need to make more money than my staff, right? And I need to be able to have the skill set that if my staff quits, calls out, comes in high, drunk, etc., I can say, all right, go pack up your shit and leave, right? And have that power. Absolutely. So I think that comes down to two, what are they doing? And then do they have experience? Or are you going to have to nurture this person? Actually, I was talking this actually with my business coach today. The majority of the grooming industry does not have managers. We don't, because most business owners are not managing their staff. Ironically, in August, we are teaching the Manage Masterclass, where we're teaching you personality styles, the way they interact. We're teaching you how to deal with people with codependency issues and how to, help people manage and cope. The majority of the industry, we have issues. I'm a groomer. Most of us have issues. If any person that would prefer to be around pets over people, it's generally because people have hurt us. It's just the truth, right? And the person who just wants to play with doggies all day, I'm not insulting dog trainers at all, but when I was a dog trainer, dogs loved me. I gave them cookies and people respected me. I wore khakis. As a groomer, people act like they're not as respectful. And it's not as fun as it was as a doggy daycare attendant. It's not as fun as a pet sitter. It's not as fun as a dog trainer because I have to create a result. So this is where, again, if we're going to have a manager, am I going to pay to grow you? And I've spent over $100,000, guys, in courses outside the grooming industry. And I read 10 business books a month to learn how to manage people and create teams. And even I'm not perfect. So it's really hard because some of the best grooming managers are not groomers. But in our industry, it's really hard to have somebody who's managing staff who can't step in, right? Because if I have a groomer who comes in and they're drunk or they're high or I think they are, I need them to leave. If I think they're going to hurt a pet, I need them to leave. So that's where, again, it's really tough. And so the other question was, if they go to Groom Expo, does the company cover all the expenses plus an hourly rate? So anytime, and we actually go through this in the Pay Master class, anytime you require someone to do anything and it's work related, you have to cover them. That means that you have to pay them their normal hours, and you have to cover their expenses. What you cover for expenses can be negotiated. There's a lot of things around that. But if you are requiring them to go, and if it is work related, which I'm sorry, a Groom Expo is work related, right? Then that has to be, you have to pay them for that, right? That's unfortunate. That said, if you would like to give them, like no different than a lot of times people will be like, oh, I'm going to go to Super Zoo, which by the way, I will be there. Vegas, baby. Anyone going to Vegas? I would love to hear it. But if you are going, it's funny because it's true. It's true. Bribe them or grow them is so true. So anyway, continuing. So I got excited. I was like, it's so true, right? It's tough. It sucks, right? Because here's the thing is if you were going away, generally you would close the business, right? And that's where, again, you can always reimburse them for things. But if you're saying I'm closing because we're going to this expo, etc., it's not easy. It gets really complicated. And unfortunately, how much the IRS is coming down and the Department of Labor is coming down on people not following through the appropriate way and not, for better or worse, doing the right thing, it is getting complicated. So that absolutely can get complicated. And I would say a good rule of thumb is always you're better off paying for things. Or, one thing you could do is say, hey, because again, if you were closed for the week, I would hope you would pay your staff. You're like, hey, we're closed for this week. This is your week paid vacation. If you'd like to come with us to Super Zoo, this is the per diem I'm offering. You already have this week paid vacation. You can either stay home, or if you'd like to come, this is the per diem I'm going to give. This is the things I'm going to give, and you're welcome to come or not. But the second you require it, it gets a little stickier. All right, let's go ahead and get it going. Yeah, this was the comment, and I loved it. So it was bribe them or grow them. It's funny because it's true. Yeah, at this point, we're all in a groomer drought, right? We need more groomers. We need so many groomers. So it's either you're going, and I will say this, remember, Anybody who's willing to be bribed away from their current situation might not be as loyal, right? And again, it's the same thing with being a beacon for your soulmate client. You might have, and you might be the kind of employer who is exactly who they're looking for, right? That's how it goes. Here we go. So where do you advertise for higher income clientele? So this is going to really depend on where you live in the country. For instance, like in the Northeast, where I am near Boston, it is very different than if you're in Texas or if you're in California, right? Because wealthy people look different in all different ways. So generally, when I start looking at what that wealthy clientele is looking for, I generally start on Zillow and I look at the highest price point real estate. And the reason I do that is because real estate agents make a butt ton of money marketing high-end homes. So I want to see how high-end homes are like what do they look like? And then how are they marketed? What words is that high-end real estate doing? How are they selling it? What is the way? Right? What are they mentioning? Are they mentioning the schools? On $1 million home, let's say, let's say the average home is 200 and this is $1 million home, right? Are they mentioning the schools? Are they mentioning the access to something that's really important locally? Is there a specific street? Like, what is important to wealthy people in your area? And what does that wealth look like? Is it very minimalistic and very clean, what I would call clean, right? Or is it what I call fancy ugly, which is like that very, it's not my aesthetic. It's like a lot of wood and a lot of like red carpet and like Persian carpets. And like, it looks like a castle kind of thing. It's like, $80,000 worth of imported marble that just looks like garbage, in my opinion, because I like that clean, minimalistic aesthetic. So I'm way more IKEA. So I'm not one to look at it. Versus I have lots of friends that love the Victorian homes. I think that in their area, it's a very high end to have these beautiful Victorians. Or antiquing. I don't value antique stuff. Right. And in my area, antique people are very different than people that want like high end, clean stuff. Right. Are they brand oriented or are they quality oriented? Is it more whisper wealth? Right. Is it more stealth wealth or is it more like Gucci high end? Like in Miami, where higher end clientele is going to be very different than, oh God, where's somebody that's like really stealth wealth? I'm so used to like in Newport, there's a good example in Newport. It's all people. It's all people. It's very mellow. It's very casual. But there's this restaurant I love to go to, and it's not uncommon for someone who's on a multi-million-dollar yacht to come to this one bar. They won't look anything different. They're in regular boat shoes. You'd never know. And they will completely pay out, right? They will completely pay out the bar tab for everyone. So like thousands of dollars worth of liquor, like you'll ask for your bill and like, oh no, this guy paid for it. And I'm like, what guy? Right? This guy just paid the bar tab for the entire bar. Right? And no big deal. So that's where we want to figure out where they're going. So this Facebook user, this is attached. So I think we're going to go here. So this user said, predictable scheduling is a big draw for the wealthier clientele in my area as they can plan meetings and shoots around their appointments, deal with a lot of level corp, lawyers, and people that film. Exactly. So ready? This is what's interesting, right? Is that in some areas, it's having a fixed schedule is very important to them. And in other areas, having a flex schedule, right? Like most of the attorneys I know are very hard to nail down. They need to be able to cancel last minute and go away, or, people on boats, right? They can't promise anything because if they're yachting from the Caribbean to here, they don't know when they're going to be in town because they could get stuck. There could be, bad weather. And again, it really depends on what they value. And that's where, again, we want to ask those higher end people. Absolutely. Yeah. So, and that's it, right? Northwest people like Northern State, mostly people wearing outdoor casual hiking clothes. They don't fall exactly. But yeah, Pacific Northwest, absolutely. Like very, very, very wealthy people in Washington, Oregon, and that part of California, they're going to be driving a Subaru. They're going to be having like, probably not REI, but that kind of stuff. And you won't know that those hiking shoes are high quality and very expensive for what I would pay, right? So that's just it. So if you were like more like Miami Gucci, like very like flashy wealth, you would turn off that person in the Northwest. So that's why I'm saying it depends. The main thing is for attracting more high income people is to find out what they value. Is it time? Is it status? Right? What is it? Is it predictability? What is it that they're craving in their work life? Another thing you do too is go on different, oh God, like monster.com. What would they call it? Like basically places like, I want to say, or LinkedIn, and look in your area and see who is what is the most, what is in general the most people employed by, like, what are the main jobs in your area and your higher end jobs? Like in my area, hospitals are the number one employer, hospitals and colleges, right? So we have a lot of professors and we have a lot of doctors, nurses, etc. They're not going to want set schedules, right? And that's the thing. What do they value? So I hope that gave you some good insight. And again, that's more something that it would do better as a one-on-one, because we could look in your area, we could do the deep dive. Or even in group, right? We've done that multiple times in group where we looked at certain areas and we said, okay, what do these people like? What's going on for real estate? What are these jobs? And we can do that deep dive, definitely either in group mentoring or as a one-on-one. Yep. Oh, sorry. We already looked at that one. Did I miss anybody? I feel like I missed a. Okay. Drinking my wine, num 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 num. Another question might not fit all on it, so I'm gonna leave it here for a second. I'm gonna finish reading it. A company I work for wants to fix their grooming department from scratch, and I want to know what to ask for or not just get involved. I recommend all the master classes, but I feel like they're gonna want me. All the master classes, but I feel they're going to want me to do it and then tell them I want to come up with, I'm not doing anything for free. 1000%. Don't do anything for free. Okay. So kind of a hot take here. I have a wonderful student who is a manager for a grooming business that is in a veterinary clinic. And she has paid for all my master classes. I love her to bits. And basically, they expect her to invest thousands of dollars into education. And they want her to basically be an owner with none of the benefits, right? Because it's also, how do I say this nicely? As a grooming manager, your job is not to be a business owner. Your job is to implement and stabilize and carry out the owner's wishes. So a manager manages. You are responsible, you are accountable, but you are not the one creating the things. And when I think about a manager of a beauty salon, well, let's actually say something like a massage envy, right? So they're going to do massages, right? The manager is not going to do massages. They're not going to do facials. They're probably not going to be answering the phones for the most part. Their job is to maintain things. They can't pull shit out of their ass to be able to create these things, right? They need somebody who's a visionary, who's a marketing person, who is creating these systems in place, and they're going to create the action for it. So whenever a company says, oh, I want to fix the grooming department, will you fix it for me? That's you say, you know what? I'm currently not offering consulting. However, if you would like to discuss a consulting fee, I can definitely put a proposal together for you, right? Because as an employee, I would not do consulting unless if it's part of your job. And most groomers, you don't want all the responsibility, because what they're saying is like, hey, can you do all the research, hand us a business plan, basically being a business owner, but have none of the benefits. That'd be great. That'd be great, right? Just so you guys know, I charge $400 an hour for coaching. They can always call me up. You just be like, you know what? I think that's amazing that you're doing that. I'd love to give you insight, but I don't feel qualified. Here's here's the information for the savvy groomer. You can also send them to Maria Quendo. There's so many other, there's Bill in the UK. There's so many options for them to go seek out a professional. It's not fair to ask you to fix their business. Even if you're a manager, like if they say to you, hey, can you please come up with a marketing strategy? I would be like, you know what? That sounds like a great option. However, at this time, that's where it's important to get your offer letter and to know what's included. And I've done this too. I've done this where I've had employees that things have always been really wishy-washy with what they do. And it creates resentment, right? Because either I'm like, oh, but you've always done this. It's like, well, it's actually not your job. And shame on me for asking you to do things that aren't your job. Or on the flip side, I'm like, but isn't this part of your job? And they're like, no, it's not part of my job. Or, everyone gets confused. So you should be like, what is my job? And it's funny, all the people posting like, oh, you should never say it's not my job. No, saying it's not my job is a very healthy boundary. It's a very healthy boundary. I'm going to say that one more time. Saying it's not my job is a very healthy boundary, right? Because if it's not my job, I can't do it well. If you didn't hire me for these things, how exactly could I? If I'm not hired to do this, if I'm not trained to do this, how am I supposed to give you what you need? It's not fair. It's not fair to you as the employer, and it's not fair to me, right, as the employee, because again, you're asking the employer if they're like, hey, can you create this? Be like, you know what? I don't really have the skill set. If you'd like, I can put together a list of resources that they can pay you for, right? They can pay you for in order to do this, okay? And I think it's really important. I think that's where, and again, I talked to my business coach because she's like, well, why don't we just tell these groomers who are really struggling with their business to hire a manager? And I'm like, because the grooming industry does not understand the difference between manager and owner. They're totally different roles, completely different roles. And it's hard because again, we don't see that modeled anywhere, right? Boundaries are so important in this industry. I love this. I feel like this needs to be it, right? The mantra for this is you are a manager and not the owner. And I think it's important. And I feel bad because it's not necessarily call it. I think it's just as an industry. And it's really interesting if you look at the different generations and the way they interact with businesses. I think it's awesome that we are so willing to take on responsibility. We're so willing to be team players. But that's not good for us. We're already short staffed. We already need more groomers, right? We already have too many dogs to groom, more cats to groom. We need more groomers, right? So I need you to like take care of you and keep yourself. Right. And exactly, downtown hound. I am the owner, manager, groomer. Right. And here's the thing, right? Is so if I was coaching you, what I would say to you is like, okay, you have 40 hours a week. How many hours a week are you a groomer? How many hours are you a manager? How many hours are you an owner? Because those are 3 roles. Those are 3 full-time roles. And instead of working 60 to 120 hours a week, how do we get that down to a max, right? Of 15, 15, 15? Or is it I'm going to groom for 20 hours and make enough money grooming for those 20 hours, right? That I can then do 10 hours as a manager and 10 hours as an owner. And I think that's where a lot of us work a million hours. We work a million hours. And then when we hire someone, we're like, bitch, I'm only asking you to work 40. Bitch, I've been working 60, 80 hours a week. Why are you whining, right? But again, that's not fair because we're the owner, right? It's tough. It's kind of like when I used to breed labs, right? It was so funny because I'm gonna be like whining about one puppy. I'm like, I have 12. I have 12 Velociraptor Labradors eating everything, and I'm trying to house break them at between 6 and 8 weeks before they go home. I'm teaching them kennel creating. You have 1, I have 12, right? It is so hard. It is so hard. So, and again, ready, it's all perspective though, right? Because if this is your first puppy, you're like, this is so overwhelming. Versus if you're a breeder and you have 12 puppies that you're preparing for homes, it's harder. But again, it's all relative. So I was a manager, groomer, HR, conflict. Working under a micromanaging owner, it was a nightmare. Striving for healthy balance with my team, and I was burning myself out 1000%. And I think this is exactly why we need change in the industry as a whole. And sometimes I do feel like I'm up on my soapbox. I know it's not always fun or exciting or sexy, right? It's boring. But this is exactly what happens, right? And again, and what's hard is that people are doing their best, right? So let me teach you guys what I was teaching my business coach today, because she's not in the grooming industry. And I love having people that are outside the industry come into our industry, because then I have to explain everything to them. And when I do that, what happens is that I'm forced to confront all the craziness of our industry. So what I explained to my business owner was this. My business coach was this. I'm the business owner. She's the coach. Thank God. Sip more wine. More wine. So I explained it like this. I said that, the average grooming business owner is a groomer who started a business by accident, right? The most of us, we wanted to open a business, but we opened it before we were ready. And the majority of us were not quite ready, right? We left an abusive grooming business. We left a bad manager. We left a toxic place, or we were desperate for money and we couldn't find an employer who was healthy and stable enough to take us on, right? And I think that's what's so hard, is that the majority of us aren't, we don't have 6 months in the bank worth of business expenses. We're not in a healthy place when we start our grooming business for the most part. We don't. So when we start there, it's really hard because we're stressed out. Some of us are already burned out, and we're scared. We're scared. I remember I opened up my first grooming salon 4 days before my son was born. I was pregnant, living in my car, and my boss, who was a doggy daycare owner, told me they couldn't give me a maternity leave because, it was just very inconvenient. They couldn't do it. And I was managing a doggy daycare. So I was throwing up, which is very inconvenient. Getting, that morning sickness, just very inconvenient. So basically they let me go, and I was living in my car, and we were desperate, and I built my business so much differently when I was desperate. And then the second go round, I opened a mobile grooming business, and I had lots of money because I had saved up about a year's worth of business expenses. I had my mobile van. I did take a loan out on that, but I had put a lot down, and I had my safety net. And I was like, all right, if I don't pay this van off quickly, I'm going to just keep the safety net. And it was a very different experience because I was emotionally in a much better place. I was financially in a better place. It all worked out. It was really amazing. It was so different. One of our Facebook users said, my boundaries in my own business are not very firm, and I consult for non-groomer owners to conduct interviews, team building for them now. Yeah. That's what happens, right? I think that's what happens is that, we have 3 master classes. We have pay, which is all about how to pay groomers hourly plus production. Manage, which is about managing employees and understanding how people think and how to create change in people in a healthy way. And then we have hire, where we go through the Savvy Groomer method of hiring, which is, hire slow and fire fast, for better or for worse. But I think there's so many people that are just kind of stuck, and it's not forever. But a lot of it's people that are really fearful. I call it the circle of suck, right? It starts with a grooming business owner who's hired generally a young girl. We are 70% under the age of 40. Most groomers start grooming in their 20s or 30s. Not everyone. So we are 70% under the age of 40. By the way, that's all millennial and Gen Z. And we are about 90% female, just to give it perspective. So it's generally this grooming business owner who hires this young girl, and they are already burnt out. They're exhausted. They're cranky, and they're really crazy busy. So they give that groomer very little training, support, instruction, mental, coaching, anything like that. Basically, they throw them into the deep end. I don't know, figure it out. Stop asking me questions. I showed you that one time 6 months ago, and if you can't remember that, tough luck. And considering how many neurodivergent people there are, I'm always like, We all learn different. Like I am dyslexic. I am a audio and like I'm screwed. Like there's no hope. So and they have no training. It's not like, okay, like I'm going to create these videos for you to learn. And if you struggle, here we go. It's just like, hey, I showed you this one time 6 months ago and you can't remember. That sucks. And if you're not good enough, I'm going to fire you. Those are going to trigger people's childhood wounds, abandonment wounds, not feeling like enough, right? So they're going to be, unintentionally either traumatized or a little bit abused, right? Not intentionally. I've done it. I've screamed at my employees because, I'm having a meltdown and I'm like, why can't you remember this? And at the time, it's because I didn't have the skill set to do so, right? Absolutely. Right. And that's the thing too, right? You've got to figure that out. And then from there, right, that person who has been unintentionally being traumatized, unintentionally, and again, I say unintentionally because I don't think people are nasty and they're meaning to do this to their employees. Like hurt people, right? This grooming business owner is exhausted, financially strapped, and this is the way they learned, right? This is how people learned 20 years ago. You were like, hey, watch this, cool, remember it, good luck, go groom 10 dogs. That's how everyone learned, basically. That's how I got a leg of a dog in grooming school. One leg. So then that person accidentally, right, is being traumatized and abused. And then they get fed up. One day they snap, they go crazy, they quit, right? And that owner is going to say, you used me. How dare you leave me? And that owner feels like they own that groomer. And then that groomer is two choices. They can try to go find another groomer to work under and they're really traumatized. And you're like, you know what? This didn't work out last time. This person was abusive. This person was nasty. And again, it's perspective. And sometimes groomers make their owners crazy. I always say, okay, was the owner crazy? Or was the owner crazy or did you make them crazy? Right? We got to find that out. So let's say this person is like, I don't ever want to deal with a mean, nasty boss who's going to harm me for better or for worse, right? Whether they're being dramatic or they're real, who cares? And they're going to post in a Facebook group. They're going to be like, yeah, open your own business. I did it for 10 grand on a credit card, which desperate people do crazy shit. So then they go open their business and now they have no training on how to be a manager. They have no training on how to be a business owner. They've only been a groomer. And now they get to be in that cycle where now they're going to work 40 hours of grooming, 20 hours as the manager, and 20 hours as the owner. So now they're working 60, 80 hours a week. And they're going to get tired and exhausted and burned out. So what are they going to do from there? The next thing they're going to do, right, is hire a bather because that's what we're told to do. Just hire a bather like it's no big deal. Just, right? You have no employee handbook. You have no roles or tiers created. You have no pay structure created. Just hire a bather. It's fine. Right? You're going to give them very little instruction. You're going to throw them in the deep end. Just throw them in the deep end. Like, here, I'm going to teach you how to bathe dogs and you'll figure it out. And no, I'm not going to tell you how to earn my money. I'm just going to you groom more dogs. I give you more money. We'll figure it out. Right. And then that person eventually learns to groom. Right. And then we go back to square one. Right. Because now that person can actually groom. Right. Now they're actually going to groom. And now, right, you're going to give them all the dogs you want to do. Because now you're really exhausted. Now you're finally invested in someone to train somebody. Or you had that bather, threw them in the deep end, didn't really have any infrastructure for your business, threw them in the deep end. They know how to bathe. And at some point you gave them opportunity to learn. Here's clippers. Good luck. Right. I'm busy. I'm crazy. Whatever. Good luck. Right. Maybe you had a full-fledged groomer and that groomer walked off the job and you're like, hey, bather, you've never groomed before. Here's a pair of clippers. Let's figure it out. Right. And so they're grooming. And then they're like, you know what? You're grooming well enough. Right. And now we're going to go ahead and have you, right now you're going to go ahead and you're going to groom all the dogs I hate because I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm not actually making as much money as I should because I was taught 50% commission to these groomers. And that leaves me with maybe 10%, right? Which barely covers anything. So I'm not making any money on you anyway. So if I'm not making any money on you anyway, you might as well do all the dogs I don't want to do. Right. And now this person who's stressed out and doing the best they can and probably only been grooming for a year or two is now doing all the quote unquote bad dogs, the difficult dogs, the elderly dogs. Right. And then we wonder why it takes 2 years to make a groomer. And then most people leave after 5. Right. Because they're not supported. I love the term baby groomer, and I'll tell you why. Because we need to nurture them, like babies. We need to say, hey, you don't know what you're doing. Let's take our time, right? Abraham Hicks says this thing where, when little kids are learning to walk, right? When they fall over, we don't go, oh, get up, you little dummy, right? And I think that's so right. Because I think there's so many baby groomers or groomers who were not trained properly. And I swear to God, like all these owners are like, oh, get up, you little dummy. Don't you know how to do this? It's like, well, who taught them? And did they learn in an environment that they could actually retain the information? There's so much here, right? There's so much here. But let me hop into some of these questions and then we're going to wrap up for the day. So this is too long for the thing, but let me start it out. Okay, but hear me out. I want to do the things, but not for free. So should I ask for more pay or am I in over my head? Should I tell them business owner to take the classes and they create everything and I should charge to manage it? Or should I charge a higher rate to create the business and then charge a different rate to manage? So it really depends upon what your long-term goal is, right? And this is what someone wrote. Will this new role come with a title change and pay increase to match the new responsibilities and expectations? Absolutely. And remember, you cannot be salary if you are grooming. There is more math to that, and we talk about that in the Pay Master class. But you can't be a manual labor employee and salary. So they have to pay you hourly. And this might be additional money. You might say, like, listen, this is what I'm going to do here for my 40 hours, my grooming. And then I have a different hourly rate for this role. And it does depend. It depends on a lot of factors, right? It depends on, is this going to be a long-term role or is this a per project, right? Are you going to ask me to create this business model? Which, by the way, that's a lot of stuff, right? You are essentially creating a whole new business. You need to have a business plan. You need to go over, if you're going to have employees, you need to go over how much you're going to pay them, how you're going to track that pay. That goes into pricing. That goes into a lot of things. And when you have no control over that, right? We could sit there and do the price increase masterclass and we're like, well, you're going to have to charge $300 for doodle. Right. And you go back to the owner and the owner's like, no, I'm not charging $300 for doodle. And then you explain all the math and they go, yeah, I don't care. Right. You say, okay, then we're not going to do doodles because they're not financially viable. And they go, no, I don't care. You need to do doodles for $100. This is why I don't love when managers are required to do that. Right. Because again, you have no power. So you're in this awful position where you're supposed to make decisions, but you don't have any power. So I always say the worst place I can personally be is if I have the responsibility, but I have none of the power, right? So you want me to do this, but I can't make any decisions and I can't change anything. So basically, if this isn't working, I'm stuck. That is a really hard place to be in, at least for most people. Some people are like, whatever, like we're just drowning slowly. It's fine. Those are not generally my people. But I would either say, like, this is either a brand new role, right? And are you going to be grooming? If you're going to still be grooming, be like, okay, this role is a different pay and it's based on how many hours you're going to be doing it, right? But even then, are they going to invest in these classes? And remember, if you can't, if they buy the class, they can't give you access, right? We don't allow password sharing. And if we find out, we will revoke your products. And we're not trying to be a bitch about it. If you let us know what's going on, we're generally kind of like reasonable. If you're like, hey, I bought this, especially if you're a member in group mentoring. But if you're like, hey, I bought this for my VA, or hey, I bought this for my manager, we will keep track of it. But yeah, because like we don't, not to be a bitch, but like, listen, we can have like 30 people doing it. They asked me to take the role, but I want to be a fair proposal in hand. And if they don't agree, then I'll pass. I would see what they bring to you. Say, hey, I need to know how many hours I'm expected to do it. What is the compensation? And what specifically do you want accomplished in what time frame? What is it that you're looking for? Right? Because this isn't, if you were a business who does this stuff, you would create the proposal and you would send it to them. But this is what they want. And I would say this is that it's also how much responsibility do you want? And if it fails, are you okay dealing with the consequences? Right. And that could be a lot of different things. I could tell from I can tell you from personal experience that you're lining it up for incredibly. I agree. I think it's really tough. I think it's really difficult to be in that position because, again, if I'm the owner, I can move things as I see fit. If you're the manager, right, I need to give you a guideline. And if it's not working, your job as manager say, hey, this isn't working. And then you as the owner come back and shift it and give me a new solution. If I am constantly finding the solutions, then I am responsible. And that puts you in a really, really tough spot, right? Because if it doesn't work well, then you're in trouble, right? Because again, if they as the owner mess up, right? It's kind of like when you're doing a haircut, right? If an owner wants a crazy haircut and you're like, that's not going to look good, but I'll do it if you want it, right? That is very different than if you're like, hey, let's try this haircut and they hate it. So I just want to leave that a little food for thought. They need to know the numbers going in, how much extra time and expense will you realistically putting into the project. Will you be able to groom the same amount as you do now? You'll be able to groom. Yeah. How much extra do you need to make to offset the time? So let's say you're going to invest realistically $5,000 in education to do this because this is not your job. It's not your education level. And on the flip side, it's also, if a professional charges $400 an hour, you should be getting anywhere between $50 and $100 an hour. And are they going to be willing to pay you $50 to $100 an hour, net, right? Hourly. So let's say you're going to say, okay, I'll spend 5 hours a week on this. It's going to be $500 a week on top of my regular grooming. Are they going to pay that? Right. Or are they hoping that you'll just do something for free? And that does happen. And sometimes it's just a healthy boundary saying, I really would love to do this. I need to know what you want done specifically, what the timeline is, and how many hours you expect the project to take. And if they don't know, that's a red flag, right? And again, I'm not saying that, again, an owner would know how much grooming time takes, but if they're not sure how many hours it's going to take to create things like a business plan, they're always going to underestimate. So, you end up with so much responsibilities. Boundaries are really difficult to enforce once they have a certain expectation that you'll just do it. Yep. And then everything is still your fault. Yeah. If you are going to do it, I would have a certain amount of hours that you charge them per week, and it would be separate. Or it would be as a W-2 position, and you're not going to groom, but you're going to get paid as a full-time person. There's lots of ways of doing it. I would say this, you can definitely do it. A lot of times, though, we're just living out our dream of being a business owner. And it's a really traumatic way of doing that. Because, again, a lot of times we're like, this is my opportunity to try out my business model that I would love to do. And I would love to customize this business just for me. But it's not your business. And it's kind of like, what's really hard is it reminds me a lot of fostering, right? If anybody guys have foster dogs, people that are the healthiest foster parents love the dog unconditionally, but they're aware that it's not their dog. And, it's really hard for somebody who takes it really personally, right? It's really hard to treat something as your own and then hand it back to somebody else. Because if it doesn't work out, you've built this business, it's your business essentially. You've put your love, sweat, and tears into it. You've created it, you've birthed it, but it's not your business and you can make choices. And if they destroy it, you have no recourse. Okay, this helps because I'm thinking of doing my own mobile and it's a lot less stressful. Right. Yeah. And I think that mobile, again, it's just a lot. I don't say it's easier, but that's the thing, right? Is if you were to spend the amount of time to create your own business and you create it just the way you want, and then if it doesn't work, you try something, it doesn't work, guess what you can do? You can change it. You can shift it. You can say, like for me, for mobile cat grooming, I don't love line cuts. I think they suck. I hate them. I have lots of friends that love line cuts. I hate them. I'm like, why would I want a line cut? I want a comb cut. I want to do nothing but bath bloaters and comb cuts, right? That business model works for me. And the average And then I have friends that are like, why would I want to do comb cuts when I can do line cuts? I get to save the cat hair to sell. And people, they're going to be so much more, right? All these things. So there's so much there that you can definitely do, but just be very careful. It's too easy to get thrown down the rabbit hole. And again, it's just one of those things where business owners are confused about what a manager does. And I want you to think of it this way. If I am a manager at a massage NB, I am not doing marketing. I'm enforcing marketing. I'm enforcing the marketing plan. I am, unless I'm the marketing manager, obviously. But if I am in charge of the day-to-day operations, then I'm just following what you want me to do. How do you want me to handle your employees? How do you want me to discipline your employees? What do you want me to do, employer, owner, when a groomer comes in and they're drunk? Do I send them home? Do I write them up? How do you want me to do this? Because I can't make that decision because I don't have the power to do so. And it's not fair to ask our employees to have that much power when it's not their business. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to finish up my wine before I head out. I'm going to go home, take my kid out. It's been so fun having time with you guys. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to spending more time with you guys. We're going to be doing more stuff. We can't tell you everything that's going on. We're always adopting, always adding. Other corporate entities have whole departments dedicated to each individual task a grooming manager is expected to do. Yeah, I think that's, again, our industry is so confused about what a grooming manager does. They're not a catch-all. They're not like anything I don't want to do. And I think that's what happens. And there's so many things we can outsource. There's definitely things we can outsource. But I think as a whole, like a grooming manager should not groom unless if somebody like calls out that day or someone quits suddenly and they need enough time to start canceling and moving appointments for, let's say, next week, right? Or the next 3 days from now, right? They might be like, I'm going to groom the next 3 days, but then I need to move everyone off the schedule, right? Then they have to have time to, are they going to be hiring? Are they going to be training? Like, what are they going to be doing? And the bigger your business is, it's not the more your manager does, it's the less your manager does. I think as a whole, the industry has to change a lot, and we're working on it. We're working on it. Listen, we got rid of mostly independent contractors. We're getting rid of that. We're working on hourly instead of commission. We're working on legal employees. I feel like we're getting there. We're getting there. We need to start making ourselves happy. But anyway, guys, I really do need to go. I really do need to love you and leave you. I need to go home, and my staff needs to go home because we are overtime, and I appreciate them staying longer. So let's go ahead and boop, 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 boop. I always lose everything. So for those of you guys that were curious, this was our virtual Q&A happy hour where you get to ask me some questions. If you liked this, I would highly suggest you sign up for group mentoring. If you go to savvygroomer.com/store, you're going to be able to see all the different ways that you can work with me. We have the business workshop library. We have all of these options. And then if you're not quite ready to invest, that's okay. We have over 200 hours worth of content on our YouTube channel. And we have a free Facebook group called Savvy Pet Pros. And it's a great group, and I'm really happy with it. All right, guys. So as always, it's lovely to see you. And I'll see you next month. Happy grooming, guys.